Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where two rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to and from work. I'm Shano.
And I'm the chameleon.
Welcome aboard and on with the show. Griffo, as always, great to have you here. Listeners, thank you for jumping on board. Big shout out, I was just watching the news, shout out to our listeners on the mid-north coast around Taree region.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay safe, guys. Far out. Don't go into flood water. Stay safe. I know our data, we get data, and we've got quite a few listeners from up there. I hope you're safe. Just listen to the ABC. Do what you need to do, and our prayers and thoughts are with you because it's insane up there at the moment. And I think latest we're what's it 7 o'clock on Wednesday. I just heard 200 mils is going to fall tonight. So stay safe. Just first shout out to them because
absolutely take it easy and hopefully all goes well.
Well, this week previewing Origin, which is I'm excited about the round ahead. But let's look at some of the results we had from last week just quickly. We had, and it would help if I got the right screen up, Shane. I need Faye back. We had the Parramatta Eels on Friday night do it against the Newcastle Knights 28-6. Bulldogs come from behind, win 24-20. They're making a habit of it, this slow starts and just flashing home. Warriors 16, Dolphins 12. Manly were back in the winner's circle, 24-6 against the Cowboys. That was away too. That was a good win. Interesting game at Sharks Park. Sharks 31 beat the Storm 26. That was interesting and entertaining. Well, I'm not going to say it made... No, it probably did make my day, actually. It didn't make my day because a later result made my day, but it went a long way to it. Dragons 30 beating the Broncos 26. Raiders 40. They're doing some good things there. Titans 24. And South Sydney 22 beat the West Tigers 12 in what was a really strange game at times to watch. It leaves the ladder like this. The Bulldogs, they've got 9 wins, 1 bye for 20 points. Warriors 8 wins on 18. Raiders also 8 wins with no bye on 16. We've got 6 wins for the Storm. They're on 14 points. Sharks have 7 wins, 14 points. They don't have the bye yet. Seagulls 5 wins. They're on 12. South Sydney 6 wins. They're on 12 as well. They haven't had their bye yet. Cowboys 4 wins and of course a draw. They're on 11. That rounds out the 8 as we see it. So we've got a clear 8 at the moment with no for and against. In 9th place we've got the Broncos. They've got 5 wins. Dragons they're on 10, sorry. So the next, I'll start that again. The next few teams are on 10 points. Broncos, Dragons, Roosters, and the West Tigers. Of those teams, Broncos, Tigers have got 5 wins. Dragons, Roosters, 4 wins. Panthers are in at 13th. They're on 9 points, 3 wins, 1 bye. Dolphins are on at 14. They're on 8 points with 4 wins. Knights, 8 points, 3 wins. Eels, 8 points, 3 wins. And the Titans round out. They are at the bottom at the moment due to for and against. 8 points and 3 wins. I bring up the wins because I think it's really important. I'm going to have a bit of a chat later about certain teams and must-win games and where I think the 8 will be come end of the year because we're coming into Origin and that's the time. This is the time we start to look at things. We'll do our report card in the next week or two, so this is about the time we start looking at these kinds of things. But Griffo, what caught your eye this week?
Well, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Just a bit of sweet chili and sour cream with a bit of tzatziki dip there. Sorry.
Oh, that's lovely. Very nice.
Not bad combo.
Very nice.
And then a little bit of Captain Morgan. No, it wasn't Captain Morgan. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it was.
I'm sporting the just so listeners know, I'm sporting the Cooper's Red this evening.
All right.
While we're doing
it might
this.
Might have been one of the fancy flavoured JDs and cold.
Oh, lovely.
Anyway, I'm just settling in. Apologies, listeners. I was last week was just an amazing. I mean, it seemed to almost say the same thing every week. Just an amazing round of rugby league. There were probably 3 or 4 things that in a normal week might have been the thing that caught my eye, but I can't go past Marky Mark.
Oh, what a try! That was outstanding.
Impersonation of a magician to do what he did with that try.
Yeah.
I'm sure, all of our listeners have seen it. He was sort of right next to the sideline. He was going to go out, but he managed to put a bit of a brake on his forward movement with a bit of sort of on one leg. He kicks the ball. He has to go outside the field of play to come back in and score a try. Now, that's not a really good summation of what Marky Mark did, but there were 4 or 5 skills that just showed this guy is an immense talent. I mean, yeah, with that sort of stuff, there's a little bit of luck involved, depending on which way the ball goes or whatever happens. But it was one of the all-time great individual tries from Marky Mark. Nwanga Tisawase, I didn't get that right. Nwanga Tisawase, or something similar to that. Yes. We all know who he is. I think I saw somewhere where the Roosters have offered him a couple of million for I'm not sure how many years to sign on further. They realize that they've got this guy and he is a great talent. I think he's exceeded everyone's expectation in terms of how quickly he's been able to adapt and just excel in rugby league. And I don't know whether he played any rugby league as a junior, but he's been fantastic for the Roosters.
I agree.
And we don't like to give the Roosters too many raps.
No, but you got to credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
I do follow rugby union. Not as much as I used to, but I still keep finger on the pulse at times. And I was talking to someone who's a union nut about Marky Mark, and I said, look, what's you? And this is before I even thought about signing. I said, if there was someone in union at the moment who you think would actually break into a rugby league team, because we've had rugby league players do the opposite. So my question was to them, well, who's a player from union at the moment who could break into rugby league and hold their own, like I'm not saying make an impact, just hold their own. And he said it was Marky Mark, and I said, oh, okay. And I was watching him. I thought, I fully agree. He made a good point. He said that basically, this guy just, if there's any game that involves putting a football in your hands and running, whether it's touch football, Oztag, union, league, whatever it is, he is just a phenomenal talent. And we're seeing that now. Like he's got very, very good skills. I love that he's bringing, this. He'll get 3 people on him and he'll throw it out the back, and that's such a rugby union move that really has added value to the Roosters, and I'm sure within a few years we'll start to see more of that, and we see it with a lot of forwards play union and then come to rugby league. Because they were both juniors. We think of, one very good rugby union player who would have been a Wallaby by now. That makes me think of Cameron Murray. He was one player who at schoolboy level played rugby union, did an exceptional job.
But he came up through league though as well.
That's right. And
junior league, and the youth was through school.
That's right. But
I think Marky Mark doesn't have that league connection.
No, but my point was that he was a guy that if he'd stuck with union, he'd be
no doubt,
he'd be a Wallaby by now. And I think And I think when you've got a guy like Marky Mark, who it's great to see the opposite now, that there's a union guy coming to the league, and even when Cam Murray, we see him offload out the back, a typical union move. When we see Mark do it, it's just so clinical. His peripheral vision and the peripheral vision of a rugby union player, when you dump the ball out the back the way he does, you have to make sure it hits one of your players' hands. If you can understand what the Roosters are doing, because they have to keep this guy. This guy's outstanding. I have been thoroughly impressed, and you know what? I've heard a few things. I've heard a few of his interviews, and I've heard him talk before he came to. Really nice guy, like just well spoken, someone who you know will add value to the rugby league community, and I take my hat off to him. I think someone who has made this bigger impact from another code, where you're right, Griffo, purely a rugby union player, he has taken to rugby league like duck to water. And like I said, that the guy I was talking to, who's a massive union fan, he said he'll work. Like he will add value to any team he plays for. So
I think just on that, Shane, with the new teams coming in and the need for talent, I think it's probably going to encourage more.
I agree.
Looking at guys in rugby union, particularly backs, who are athletic. I mean, we saw the Melbourne Storm got Will Warbrick with them. He actually played AFL over in New Zealand. He may have played union as well, but these guys who are tall, athletic, they're the sort of guys that are obviously really suited to the outside backs.
Yes.
I saw Marky Mark live the first time the Panthers played the Roosters early in the season, and I was really surprised just how big he's a big guy.
Oh, he's huge. He's a tall dude.
I didn't pick that up on the TV.
I'd seen him play rugby union, and quite often some of those, like, they're very tall players. Like, there's no in between. You're either sort of 5'11" and 5'11" wide, or you're like 6'3". Yeah. And he's of that, and he is. I first saw him. The first thing that I saw him. Where did I see him? It was a union thing, and he was solid. That's what got me. Yeah. It's how solid this dude is, and athletic. Yeah. Like it's just he's got, it looks like he had muscle on muscle, and this tall, athletic guy whose football IQ, like, to score that try, your football IQ has to be through the roof. You don't fluke your way to that.
Definitely not.
That's and I've also heard on the grapevine, he is one of these guys, when everyone else is training for 2 hours, he's training for 2.5. Like, that's he has been, I'll say, a breath of fresh air to the Roosters, I think, and in a year where the Roosters were sort of prepping their fans, Pilates calling it rebuilding year, saying we got a lot, he's been this breath of fresh air for them. I think it's a good thing. I agree with you, and I think the NRL, especially New Zealand, like, I know people sort of ask, where's this New Zealand form come from and where are they finding these players? 3 or 4 years ago, the New Zealand Rugby League, and we talked about it on this podcast, New Zealand Rugby League, to entice players over to Rugby League, created a under-20s style competition that only included New Zealand teams. And it was immensely successful. It really allowed those fringe rugby union players an opportunity to play in a high stakes quality competition. And I think we're actually going to see some benefit from that. I took my hat off at the time to New Zealand Rugby League. They understood what they needed to do, and they were innovative. You know, this thing was played at parks that you know, it was almost like backyard football parks, but they believed in it. They gave it TV. I was watching it on KO. They gave it TV coverage. They put commentators. They gave it some quality. You know, this was being played at. This wasn't being played at Concord Oval style thing. This was being played at Pitt Park. If you live in Wentworth Falls, you know what I'm talking about, where people were lining the sidelines, and you know, it would be like being played at the Kingsway for people who live in Western Sydney. It had full-time it had television. It had commentators. It had people who were happy not to get paid to invest in it. And this is what we're seeing now. We saw those people from Rugby Union come over. I think it's going to pay dividends for clubs like the Bears who are coming in, and other clubs that might feed off that. I agree with you. I think we've got to start looking for those players who are the fringe rugby union players and go, hey, give it a crack. Come over to the league, have a go. And I think it really did start back then with the Warriors, with New Zealand Rugby League and what they've done. And I think the Warriors are paying dividends, and there's definitely a pool of players there that may crack it into mainland Australia, and for all we know, maybe living on the furthest option away from New Zealand, which is Perth.
Well, the other thing with that, the link, the possibility of opening more so up for the South African players.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
there's a very large contingent of South Africans living in Perth. So perhaps the Bears can draw on guys who may be on the fringe of whatever that competition is. I don't watch any rugby union, but there's obviously guys who might be candidates down the track to be a Perth Bear out of South Africa. The other interesting thing, Shane, and you touched on it with Cam Murray, this increasing trend for talented junior rugby league players to be now going through the private school system, the GPS system.
Yep.
And especially the Roosters are now sort of putting their players, a lot of them into, I think, Scots College, but others as well.
Yep.
But we've seen a lot of guys from Newington, which is where Cam Murray went. I think perhaps Tolatau Kohler might have been out of there as well. The McLean brothers at Penrith, I think, went there. Isaiah Katoa finished his schooling at Barker. So a lot of these talented rugby league players at a junior, of obviously Suwali at Kings with Will Penasini now.
Yep.
Penasini was at Blacktown Patrician Brothers, which is one of the most famous rugby league schools. But a lot of these guys are getting scholarships to go to these prestigious schools that most people can't afford.
And I'll just on that, Griff. These scholarships, I actually knew someone who didn't divulge what their scholarship was, but I was able to sort of generate ballpark figure. These are schools where you can be talking about $45,000 to $50,000 a year. That's for people who don't understand who these schools are, who might be it might be in the state or whatnot. The money that you're talking is not. It's not. It's these are school fees that are out of the realms of most people. Like this is high end school fees that the parents would jump all over. That you mentioned Pat Blacktown. I imagine a child there would be 5,000 a year. That's some of the fees could be tenfold when you're talking Barker, Kings, and the person I was talking about was at Kings, and that's on top of. People go, well, how do you pay that much for education? The uniform's thrown in. If you've seen their uniform, especially their marching uniform, it's insane. It's like a military kit, and everything that's associated with that. So but
they have to play rugby union.
They have to play rugby union to do it, and it's. I think. I know when players like Wendell Saylor and Matt Rogers went to rugby union. One of the things, and Walker when he went, one of the things they said is they brought a level of rugby league to the game, and you saw this as expansive game, very fast flowing, passing, type of game where if you got isolated, you'd offload and things like that. I'm wondering if we're going to see a flip of that with this kind of thing, where we're going to see a lot more. We see it now, balls out the back, and a lot more of this sort of union style play. I don't think we'll ever see the power game of union come into rugby league. It's just 5 meters or locks feet just doesn't work in rugby league. But it's amazing how I look at Mark. And I just say that when that guy throws, to have a look at it next time the Roosters play, he'll hit the line and throw the ball out the back, and it always hits a player. It never falls. Rarely, I think once last week, it fell to the ground. The peripheral vision that you have to generate and create yourself, he's already attracting attention because he is very talented. So he'll attract 3 players. You dish it out the back, there's got to be a gap somewhere, and I think. I think we're going to see, I think we're going to see, I suppose the flip side to that is if you love or hate rugby union, whatever side you're on, it probably dilutes the rugby union pool. That could be, you could be fine with that or you could be upset with that. But
yeah, it could work the other way as well.
100% it could.
And you look at Brad Fittler's son, who
yes.
Was an outstanding junior rugby league player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which school, union school he went to, but he decided he saw his path in rugby union.
Well, I suppose the allure of playing for the Wallabies at a time where
I don't know. I think in that case, maybe he just thought, I don't want to put pressure on myself by being, I'm Brad Fittler's son. It's a bit like Jet Cleary going to play for the Warriors. He wants to create his own
yes, I agree.
Name rather than just living off the fact that he's Nathan Cleary's younger brother.
Can I ask a question? I saw that, and I don't know if I've ever taught. Was he born in New Zealand?
It was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was just thinking. I was doing the math just a few weeks ago, and I thought, yeah. So I think it's interesting.
One of his sisters were born in New Zealand.
Yeah,
because Cleary was over there for a number of years.
It was very that year.
Both as a player and then the coach. Later as a coach.
That year, I'll never forget. That year, they made the grand final. I thought their football was outstanding. Yeah, it was. They were a very good football side. They were a very good football side during those times.
They're very flamboyant back there.
They were, weren't they? And
Ali Lauatiti, he might have been in the first grand final they made, but they did like to throw the ball around.
They did. And it's look, you look at the players that hadn't actually do yourself a favour, go back and have a look at that team, because if you look at the players that had in that side, a lot of those players, and the reason why that the team sort of, I suppose, fell apart quickly. A lot of those players after that grand final went to clubs to flourish and and a few of them actually won grand finals and premierships at other clubs. They were outstanding. So if you like a bit of league history, do yourself a favour. Look at that Warriors team, because they were a very good football team. A couple of good football teams are going to be running around Wednesday week. Griffo, should we go through the state of origin teams?
Sure. I mean, it's that time of year, isn't it?
Because I think I don't want to go through it just because, well, you know, let's just talk about. I want your thoughts on what initial thoughts, Griffo, before we go through the side. Blues team. What's your initial thought?
Yeah, largely predictable, and rightly so, because you got a lot of good players there. The one surprise for me was Max King on the bench.
I agree.
Yes,
I'm
not going to knock the guy.
No. Dog's
out there wearing
well.
blue, but I just thought there were some guys who probably, I would have picked ahead of him, but.
Did you pick Mitch Barnett?
Yeah, Mitch Barnett's. I think I might have had Mitch Barnett either on my bench or.
Yep.
But I got no problem with Mitch Barnett.
I don't either. I think he's been phenomenal. So
he was certainly my 17. I can't remember if I had him starting or on the bench, but yeah, definitely in the 17.
Look, where the
there, but yeah, just Max King. Look, I hope he has a blinder.
So do I.
Yeah, I would have had certainly. I would have had Hamoli probably in the 17, but I can understand what Laurie's looking for. He's looking for a guy to go out there and absolutely keep that middle tight. There's plenty of other guys, I guess he's thinking, that can break the game open. But yeah,
I'm going to give my thoughts. We'll go through the teams. I suppose we'll go through both. It's only fair. We've got Queensland listeners too, so we'll go pound for pound, and then I suppose wherever the Blues persuasion, we'll talk a bit about the Blues team, and then probably where the Maroons we feel where our vulnerabilities lie. Fullback Dylan Edwards, Kalen Ponga, Blues Maroon. We'll go that way. The wingers, Brian To'o for the Blues, Xavier Coates for the Maroons, fairly predictable there. Zach Lomax for the Blues, happy to see. Val Holmes for the Maroons. I don't know who else you put in there, but there's a small part of me. I don't know if I was surprised or what with that one. Robert Toya for the Maroons and the Hammer, they're the centres. Stephen Crichton and Latrell Mitchell for the Blues. A little bit of a caveat over Stephen Crichton is carrying an injury. Basically, they've come out and said that Campbell Graham is the walk-up replacement for Stephen Crichton should he be unable to take the field. He's been given every opportunity to show his fitness. So, but sort of word out of camp is, and I've been on a few forums and whatnot. Word is that that's not looking good for Crichton, which. Yes.
Oh, really? I heard the opposite, but I heard
okay. No, I heard it's actually.
I heard anything today.
I heard it's not looking good. It's still at 50-50. Okay. So, I know Laurie Daly wants better than 50-50 very shortly, which is rightly so. He's going to want to run lines and a week to go. My gut feeling says he'll be fine. That's just my gut feeling. I've got nothing to base that on. 5'8" for the Blues is Mitchell Moses. 5'8" for Queensland is Cam Munster. Nathan Cleary is the halfback with Daly Cherry Evans, halfback for Maroons. So they're fairly predictable there. Mitch Barnett and Payne Haas, they're the bookends for the Blues. Fodawaker and Big Tino bookends for the Maroons. Reece Robson got the number 9 spot. Harry Grant got the number 9 spot for the Maroons. So Reece Robson for the Blues. If you're unsure who I'm talking about. Liam Martin and Angus Crichton are in the second row for the Blues. Ruben Cotter and Jeremiah Nanai. They are the second rowers for the Maroons. I hate the Maroons, but I love that same team sort of second row there. I actually think that's a really good, smart pick. I was hoping they wouldn't do that, but they have. Isaiah Yeo is the captain for the Blues, and congratulations to him. It's well deserved. I've been singing his praises for years on this podcast, and I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. Patrick Carrigan is locked for the Maroons in a position he hasn't played a lot of late. Connor Watson, Spencer Leniu, Hudson Young, and Max King are on the interchange bench for the New South Wales Blues. Queensland Maroons sees Tom Dearden, Collins, Beau Fermor, and Liero for the Maroons on the interchange bench. I haven't done the numbers, but we got 3 at least for the Cowboys as well. Kurt Mann, the reserves are I suppose the reserves. The key reserve, I think, from either of these sides, which may step into Campbell Graham. I think all these reserves will end up being back in Clubland this week. So we'll talk about them when they. I actually think it'll go 1 to 17. My personal opinion. New South Wales Griff. Strengths, weaknesses. Where are we at? I like the team. To be honest, I'm always nervous when Daly picks something. Like Daly teams of the past, you're like going, oh God. Yeah, they were in form 3 years ago. I like this side. I think this team can win. I really do. I think it's got a great mix of. I think it's got a great mix of incumbency mixed with talent, new talent. I think it's got some really good. I think it's got some really good playmakers. My only concern is this. I want to see. I think this side can tackle till the cows come home. I really think our forward pack is a solid defensive forward pack. Liam Martin and Angus Crichton allows for some really good wide running second row offloads. I just think that on the bench, Spencer Leniu, I love Spencer Leniu, love Hudson Young, love Max King. I think that if you're going to have Reece Robson and not Appy, you need a spark of creativity somewhere. You need someone to either come off the bench that's going to generate lots of meters, that can play the ball well. You almost need another Liam Martin on the bench. That's the only criticism I've got of this team is that I think that my biggest concern is I don't want to find that we're 60 minutes in, it's 6-all, Blues have had all the ball, and we're going, come on Nathan, do something. That's not Nathan's role. Or Mitchell, kick it to Lomax. That's not Mitch. I just hope we have enough creativity elsewhere in the spine and elsewhere in the team. Because I love Dylan Edwards, and I was, on the podcast, I was punching the table until he was getting picked. But there's a guy called Ryan Pappenhausen who's playing some exceptional creative football at the moment. Have we got enough creativity to beat the team that we're going to be playing in the Maroons?
Yeah, I think so. well, Cleary. You mentioned Cleary and Moses. There's plenty out of those two guys. You mentioned Appy before, and I think the team must have been picked before.
Oh, he had a blind. That's why I mentioned him. I'm just like far out.
When I was talking about the grab, there were two other things that I didn't mention.
That run where
one
he
of them was Appy, who absolutely cut a hole through the South Sydney front line, and
I
put a step on Latrell, and
you know what?
And he backed it up with a try in the second half as well. It wasn't as spectacular,
it was a bittersweet thing to watch because it was just brilliant rugby league. It was just phenomenal individual rugby league that in any other team watching, you'd stand up and clap. But it was against South Sydney, and I said at halftime, we're going to lose this game 18-16. I can see it now, and we almost did. But yeah, Appy was great. Yeah.
Look, I'm not going to criticise Reece Robson because he's a really good player and he played really well.
Yeah.
But Appy is a better number 9.
I agree. I do agree.
So, and that's fair enough. Incumbency, he did the job. Appy is a much more talented number 9 than Reece Robson, but I do believe Robson deserves to be there. Just as someone like Liam Martin, he's not been in great form this year, but he gets picked because he has done the job.
I'd rather have him there than not.
Well, of course, but I'm just saying there are guys who've been in better form.
Yeah.
But he deserves his spot. The other, and you talked about a potential strength of Queensland. And I'm not sure if Xavier Coates will be up against Brian To'o. Well, it doesn't really matter who he's up against because Xavier Coates, his leap against the Sharks, where he went ahead of Daniel Hansen, I think it was spectacular. And I'm sitting there thinking, how can one human get up that high above another? It's just not something new for Coates. He's just phenomenal in the air, and that's a big strength for Queensland, particularly if he's marking up on Brian To'o, who he will leap, but Coates has got him probably a meter or so for height when you're jumping in the air. So that's a mismatch if that's how they line up. But I've said that before in the past.
Oh, he's held his own.
He does, and he's done it against the Storm, and he's done it against Queensland. But that's the potential. I heard somewhere, I don't know if it's true or not, but there were some AFL people saying, if that was in the AFL, that would have been Mark of the Year, what he did, Coates. But so that's his strength for the Queenslanders. The interesting one is the Toy Boy. I agree. Toya, who has only played, I think, 10 NRL games. Was it last week where he dropped the ball over the line? He did a Jaden Sewer.
Yep.
Was it the week before?
Week
against the Bulldogs last week.
Week before.
Week before, was it? Okay.
I think. Yeah. I remember it. Yeah.
Seems like a while, but
no, it was last week. It was last week. Sorry, it was last week.
Yeah.
Yes, it was last week. Yeah.
Back to Roosters in that game, and I didn't know the score, and I watched it the mini. That could have been crucial. But there was no real pressure on him, and he spilt the ball. It can happen to anyone, but it doesn't. It's only a select few who fall into that category of losing the ball over the line without anyone else's hand on you. But he's a good player, but I think he's matching up on Latrell. Now, Latrell, and we've talked, he's probably taken up more podcast rugby league airspace than any other individual player, both for good and not so good.
Yeah.
And we've constantly said that his best position is in the centres, where he doesn't have to exert as much energy. But what he does, and particularly at state of origin level, he makes his fewer contributions in the game count. So
Yeah.
you're getting quality rather than quantity with Latrell. He's a match winner. He's an absolute line breaker, and the pressure is going to be on the toy boy up in Brisbane. And if he can stand up, Toya, and hold his own, then he's got a long career ahead of him in the centres for Queensland. They're missing quite a number of outside backs through injury. He'd probably not be there if all were fitting well, but he is there. There's not too many debutants in this game. I think maybe Queensland have 3.
They do have 3, yes, they do.
Arrow and Fermor, both very good players on the bench, and the Blues just the one with Max King on the bench. So Toya's the only guy starting who's a debutant, and it's imperative for Queensland to be able to win this game that he is not swallowed up by Latrell, as some other players have been in the past. Latrell, I think he's played his best football in Origin.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm hoping that he does starting Wednesday next week, because he is in form. Again, with Latrell, you get a lot of good, and you get some not so good. I think defending in the line, he's not going to get stepped like where he's by himself at the back, as Appy did, and that can happen to any fullback. But he's a very strong defensive centre in the line, Latrell.
Yeah.
So Toya's up against it, but it's a big challenge, and I'm sure he'll be very excited about it. We see the Hammer go back into the centres for Queensland.
I like it.
Back at the Dolphins. He's going to be up against Crichton. That's going to be a great matchup. Crichton, the best defensive centre in the game, and a very, very good attacking weapon as well. He's not just a defender. Up against the Hammer, who's a very good defender. And well, he's one of the best attacking weapons in anywhere in Rugby League. So that's a good matchup. The spines, you've got Ponga, who we know is a match winner, but not in the best of form, in a club that's not in the best of form. Monster is in very good form. DCE's been up and down. Is he going to be the Ali Briginshaw of the men?
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's
similar age. We'll talk about the women's game later, but she's been a star of the number 7 jersey for Queensland, Australia for probably over a decade. Similar age to DCE. I think DCE's in probably better shape at the moment, but he's not in the best of form. But we know he's a match winner at this level, and he's was the captain. He's done a great job over a number of years. Can I just
go back to the wingers?
Yep.
They've picked Val Holmes on the wing, and they've put Jesse Arthurs in reserve. If this was your team, would you flip that?
For my team, I'd have Arthurs on the wing and Holmes in the centres.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I just looked at it and I went, Robert Toya's been given the centres role. It seems like in giving Robert Toya the centre, they've put Holmes to the wing, and Jesse Arthurs is now on a reserves bench. There's a small part of me that says, there's a guy in the reserves. I wouldn't say your best winger, but because Xavier Coates is there, but outside of Xavier Coates, your best wingers in the reserves bench. That doesn't make sense to me.
I thought Arthurs was a Kiwi, but he's not apparently. He played for the Maori, but
okay. He was born in Auckland. He was born in New Zealand.
Yeah, I always thought he was a Kiwi, but
Robert Toya was born in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, no, I know. Like apparently, Arthurs has played for the Maori,
okay.
Like Kalen Ponga.
Okay, because I know. Yes, he has. You're right, 100%. Because I know Robert Toya, he came out and went through the Redcliffe system. That's why he's... Right. I just wanted your thoughts there quickly, because I just look at Val Holmes on the wing there, and I'm sort of thinking, well, whilst I suppose Dragons fans be going, we've got a player playing Origin, there's a small part of me that says, why?
Look, injuries are a factor.
Yes, of course.
I see Holmes more as a winger at this level, because I think he gets, in defence against guys like Latrell and Crichton that he's probably not quite up to it in defence these days. But I think on the wing he's still a good option. But to be honest, I really don't care.
I don't care either. But we do have Queensland listeners. I suppose we've got to bring into the conversation. But yeah, I was. But
they have about 3 or 4 guys in those positions who are currently injured. So
yeah, that's right.
It is a bit, and plus obviously Walsh as well. But the Blues, there's not really. I can't think of too many guys apart from Cam Murray who are on the injured list and would have made this team.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Cam Murray's the only one I can think of.
I agree. I went through it today and I said the only person missing who I think is injured is Cam Murray. Griffo, what do you think of our interchange? I like it. I think it's a really... Connor Watson's there again. I think he does a really good job at coming at 14.
It was great last year.
Spencer Leniu is a great player. Hudson Young's been carving up, and
he's been in the form second row.
Hats off to Max King, who's been a leader and a charge.
I'm not going to. You asked me what I think. Well, I'd go 14, 15, 16 tick, 17. Look, I probably would have had Terrell May in there, but he's not in the squad.
Can I offer you something outside Terrell May?
Yeah, sure.
I was talking to someone today, and they said, find me my biggest problem with Terrell May, he's got one of the slowest play the balls in rugby league. If you look statistically, he's got one of the slowest play the balls in rugby league. That doesn't really amount to much when you're making 200 odd meters. The 2 players I think that are missing from this whole squad are Tyrell May and Keon Koloamatangi.
Good call. Yes, absolutely.
I just think that, look, I think Max King will do a fantastic job, but I think both those players, and Keon's not without his faults either, but I just think both those players, Keon and Tyrell May, they offer more than just the bookend run it up. They've played, they've got good hands, they're good at playing the ball, they can slip into second row, they can do second phase play, they're happy to take 2 runs.
Well, that's the advantage of Keon Koloamatangi is you can have him at 8, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, I just thought
very versatile.
Yeah, I know that when...
And he's in great form.
Yeah, I know that and he is. Look, and it's not just about the club he plays for. He's actually playing some good footy. I know that Laurie Daly said he doesn't want anyone new. This is the new guy. And I'm just thinking, well, if you're going to have a new guy, wouldn't you have a new guy with options? And I love Max King. He's in most sides in this competition, he would not only crack it in the start, he would be on the bench at the very least. He'd be a starting front rower. I just think that when you've got Spencer Leniu and Max King, Hudson Young's the second rower, we've got the interchange player. I would assume that probably Stefano becomes the 18th man.
No, it's locked in. Campbell Graham's 18.
Campbell Graham's 18. Right. So
Just as Kurt Mann is locked in.
Locked in. Okay.
Kurt Mann can't play for the Bulldogs this week.
That's it? Okay. Okay. So, because I know Olakau'atu is also named for...
Yeah. He's
so locked in.
I'd have Olakau'atu in the 17.
Yeah. But, I just think that there's... I think
versatility is key.
Yeah, you're right. Versatility is the word I'm looking for. There's this lack of versatility that I hope with if you're 12 all with 10 to go, what are you looking for? You're not looking for a bookend to hit it up.
No.
You're looking for something
like
extra.
you know
what
I
mean?
Like an Olakau'atu or
you're looking for something extra, and I just think that's for me. I hope it's 30 to 12 with 10 to go, and the Blues have sailed home.
Take away 12 on that.
But yes.
I know what you mean.
30-0 would be great. I just that's my only concern. But that's the that's the New South Wales Blues and the Queensland Maroons. It's next Wednesday. We'll definitely try for Tuesday. And do it. Even if we do a quick Origin preview, you guys can hop in the car and listen to on your way to work Wednesday morning.
This is the only next week's the only Origin game I'm not going to. I've got my tickets for Perth today.
Oh, beautiful!
Yeah, going over.
Fantastic.
And then I'm going to Sydney, obviously. I've never actually been to Origin in Suncorp, so maybe I'll have to. That next year.
I'd be very keen to go to that. Talking of Origin, the New South Wales Blues women, they had an emphatic win last week. They beat the Maroons 26-6. It was.
And there's a big question mark on the 6.
Yeah. Yes.
Diabolical.
Yes. 6-0, and you sort of went, wow. Talfa, Kenny, Fassad, Chapman, and Koenig getting a double. Jesse Southwell 3 from 5. It was in the wet, an absolutely dominant performance. I spoke to some people on Friday, and I said, in the wet, the control that the Blues had in the wet, whether it's men's or women's, that was one of the most fantastic performances in adverse weather conditions I'd ever seen by a rugby league team.
Oh, they're outstanding.
And that's it. I don't care what you play, who you play for, or your gender when you play. That was one of the most controlled and skillful exhibitions of rugby league I had seen in adverse weather conditions in a long time or ever. They were outstanding, the Blues, and hats off to the Maroons because they held their own for a long period of time too. But the control, the respect for the football, the way they played, the safety first, they did everything they needed to do. I said to my daughter, it reminded me of a car race where the person in front just did what they needed to do to win. They raced to the conditions and what the race dictated to them. It was one of the most mature and outstanding exhibitions of rugby league I have had the pleasure of watching. And I take my hat off to both teams, especially the Blues, because I mean it. There are men who play professional rugby league who should have watched that game, and they would have learnt not just a little bit, they would have learnt a lot. I thought it was a phenomenal game of rugby league, and 12-6 at half time to win 26-6. It was a brilliant defensive performance. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a great game. For me, Kennedy Cherrington yet again played an outstanding game of football, and I just thought that everyone, led by Jesse Southwell around the park, and Penatani Gray also putting her in 5'8". You know when you finish watching a game and you're fist pumping the air and you're just happy? That's what I was. I was just fist pumping and I was very happy.
I watched almost the entire game with the sound down because I was on the phone talking to my daughter who's in New Zealand at the moment, and watching the game, no sound, and you sort of, when the sound's on, they obviously highlight certain players and whatnot, but Tannen Aiken, who to me is the best female rugby league player on the planet, I was thinking, is she on the field?
Yeah.
She was completely nullified. And obviously the conditions weren't suiting a player like her with the skill set that she's got. Poor old Upton, the Upton girl, who I sort of rate as the second best player in female rugby league, she was obviously injured because she had a shocker.
She was. Can I no disrespect. I'm going to say this. No, I think I can say this without being disrespectful. She looked uncomfortable.
Well, I think she was injured.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
It just went straight past her.
She didn't look as comfortable. It didn't look as fluent for her this game. It just looked like nothing's an effort for Tamika Upton. And it looked like everything was a bit of an effort that night. And I agree with you. I think there was something else.
She's out of game 3, I saw. She's not been selected.
I think there's something
obviously
else.
Went in there with an injury, and unfortunately it was a little bit embarrassing the way 3 tries were scored by someone just going straight past her. She doesn't play that way.
That doesn't happen every day for her.
The other thing I want to point out, and you talked about the quality of the Blues, absolutely correct. I want to put a big shout out to Coach Strange.
Yes, most definitely.
Masterminded.
Well,
I think we should have been doing this for a few years because it's basically the same teams with a few exceptions over the last probably at least 2 or 3 years. Last year, the New South Wales coach, for reasons that I'll never understand, didn't pick Jesse Southwell.
Yeah.
On coaches, Donald Duck, the former coach of the Gillaroos, I could not understand last year how he left Olivia Kernick out of that team that played for the Gillaroos at the end of the year. He was a big part in who won the player of the match in the grand final, where she was the best player on the field.
100%.
I was about to say head and shoulders, but
Olivia Kernick.
Maybe just head above everyone else.
Can I say she's the best? She's the best lock in the women's game.
She's outstanding, and she showed again her class. She was the best player on the field.
And geez, he's no slouch at winning at the moment, is he?
No, I mean he's got a good squad.
I know he's got a good squad, but he has created a team, and for those of you who don't know, he won the women's. He was the coach of the women's grand final winning team last year. He's created a team that every coach prays for, a team that when the reserves or when the interchange players come on, it's like for like.
Yeah.
And that's what he's created.
Well,
he's created this team where everyone knows what to do. It's poetry.
I think there's a bit of cash as well involved in.
Well, you know what? That's what it takes, doesn't it? it goes to show that this matters now, and I think it's a good thing.
I don't know if there's a salary cap in the NRLW, but
the
Roosters,
and that's true. Like Uncle Nick and his brown paper bags are fairly.
But he's obviously quality. I'll be interested, to see if at some stage he goes from.
I think he must
into the men's game.
I think there is this. I think I was only thinking of this the other day. I know there's a lot of talk around who's going to coach the Bears, and Walters is come out as the front runner.
Walters? No, he's not.
I'm not joking.
No,
I'm not joking, mate. I heard it was on the all over the news and the radio. And anyway, I went, no way. And they've been trolling forums, and they're like, apparently there's been talks, and I'm like, no, surely not.
They surveyed
surely
the
not.
Did they?
I tell you what,
No,
if you want to grab a coach that has no NRL baggage per se, that is going to give you 150%, you've got one right here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll see Big Mal as the.
I think Mal's going to get it too. But
he will be the figurehead, and as when he was with the Queensland.
But you know what? When he was he has his minions, and I think this is one of the guys that could be in the assistant coach in the background, bubbling away to take over. Mal's not going to take on this job.
No, Mal will do it for 2 years.
Yeah, and you know what? You sit in the wings.
They need a guy who's got charisma, a guy who is well known, and Mal. He's an immortal of the game,
they'll have Billy Moore for that.
Yeah, I just think.
Yeah, I agree.
They just have Mal. Mal, he was a bit of a flop as an NRL coach.
Well, yes, yeah,
and obviously a huge success coaching Queensland, but he had a team that
Mal.
Even if they didn't have a coach, they would have.
No, this is me with Mal. Mal is a brilliant people person.
Yeah.
Strategic rugby league.
He has people underneath.
I'm looking at a set of scissors that could probably come up with more strategic plays than Mal. But when you think of a people person who can galvanise people and players, that's Mal.
Yeah.
Mal is larger than life. And I think that Mal doing the people person thing, and if he needs someone to do the rugby league strategic thing, I think we've got our person here.
Yeah. I
hope not, because I hope he stays with the Blues,
the
women Blues, and wins the next 3 or 4 years. But you know what I mean.
Unfortunately, Kevy, great bloke, not great coach.
Kevy's the same. Kevy, great guy, can galvanise a team, really good people person, but when it comes to the strategic. And people were joking. Who's coaching the Broncos? Adam Reynolds.
Well, the players said that.
The players said
no one Cobbo.
That's right. And it's like the guy's a great people person. The guy's a great people person. But he's not a great strategist of the game. And that's what Bellamy is. That's what Wayne Bennett is. That's what Robbo is. To some extent, that's what Madge is. Although Madge is in a world of pain on his own at the moment, by the sound of it. But that's another thing.
Yeah.
I thought the Blues women played a phenomenal game in absolutely treacherous conditions. How
bad was that field?
You know what? There was. It's not often I can think back on rugby league games, and when you're vested, it's more stressful than enjoyable. Geez, that was an enjoyable rugby league game to watch, and I want to thank the New South Wales Blues women for what they've done so far. I as a Blues fan, I thoroughly love watching it. And to the Maroons, again, thank you for what they've done. I think the women's game is going ahead leaps and bounds, and it's only good. It only does good for our competition. So, that was 26-6. Very, very good game. It was and I love the spirit it's played in. Final thoughts, Griff, on that game before we move on to previewing this week.
It was comprehensive, and it was good to see. And it was the same in the first game, and I hope we see the same in Game 3 in Newcastle. I couldn't go last week. I would have gone. Apparently, it was not a very big crowd.
No, the rain.
Yeah.
I was actually, and I know I actually was trying to move heaven and earth to go because I was actually quite keen, but unfortunately,
couldn't I'll look to go next year. It was just not possible for me to get there last week. But next year, certainly, I've not been to a women's Origin game. I've seen the Gillaroos go around a few times, including the massacre in Vegas.
Yep.
But I've not actually seen an Origin game. So I'll need to tick that one off, and I'll try and tick that one off next year, hopefully with another Blues win.
That's right. Now, just on Vegas, last week when we did our podcast, it was literally moments after we signed off that the Vegas 26 teams were announced. The Dogs, Dragons, Knights, and Cowboys. With Hull and the Rhinos being part of the world. But if you're a Bulldogs, Dragons, Knights, Cowboys fan, if you've got an option to go and you can work it out, jump on. Look, we don't have any sponsors for this podcast. If you want to sponsor us,
that's a good idea.
Have a crack. But I am going to say, jump on the NRL website if you're unsure how to navigate this or where to go. Jump on the NRL website. They've already got flights and packages and deals for Vegas 26. So if you're a Dogs, Dragons, Knights, or Cowboys fan,
I'm going to give testament to say, if you can, if your club's playing and if you can go, and I understand, it's not everyone can do it financially or responsibilities at home. I highly recommend it. It's a great experience to go to Vegas and watch the beginning of the NRL season. Go to the fan night. That was just amazing. I had a very close link with Captain Morgan before I headed out there.
It's a good link to have.
Yeah, there are a few other captains there as well, but it was an amazing night. It's been the highlight of my 2025. That night, the fan night at Fremont Street, just the vibe, the atmosphere, people from all walks of life from different parts of the world. Obviously, the concentration was of Australians, but wearing different shirts, different jerseys. Everyone was just in a happy spirit. The players, you could tell that they were so happy to be there. It was just a wonderful experience. To be fair, the games they were a bit of a letdown. That just happened to be what it was. There were 3 landslides, but then the Panthers and Sharks put on a great display. But I think 3 games is probably enough. But it'll be a great atmosphere. You got the Bulldogs and the Dragons who don't like each other. You got the two regional teams, the Cowboys and the Knights, who both really their communities absolutely love their rugby league team. If you can, do it.
I think it's good. I think it's a good thing. I've made a secret pact with myself, and Griffo, please join me. I want to get to a magic round. So
Yeah.
thinking next year, you watch, next year will be the year that South have the bye. But yeah, I think that these types of things, get behind it. Seriously, if you can go, you've just heard the Griffo, and no matter when we talk to Griffo and his experience of it, and everyone else, I know when South went the first year, I know quite a few South fans that went, and it's only getting better. So you look at the what was there last year, it's going to get better next year. So if you've got an opportunity, you can go. Look, Griff, round 12 kicks off on the 22nd of May. A big shout out, actually, tonight, 21st of May. Happy birthday. Rabbitoh Juzzy. He's a big fan of the show.
Not just Rabbitoh Juzzy.
Our numbers. Yes, he's our number three in the number three in the clan as far as kids go, but number one with heart, the biggest heart. Juzzy, happy birthday today.
I sent him a message earlier.
Yes, number one with heart, biggest heart. Thanks, Juzzy.
The absolutely most wonderful human beings I've ever met.
Yeah. So happy birthday and massive shout out to him. Tomorrow on the 22nd, though, we have the Bulldogs versus the Dolphins. First place take up against 14th. Massive changes for the Bulldogs. I suppose we'll go through the outs. Suka Fafita is out. Kiraz is out. Mann is out. King is out. And, of course, Stephen Crichton is out. It does a bit of a shuffle. It brings so for the wingers, we've got Marcelo Montoya and Blake Wilson. Bronson Sherry in the centres. Blake Taft makes his way into the centre. Burton and the Sex Bomb. Hot Boy is a prop with Josh Curran, Reed Money at number 9. Villami Kickout is the captain, Harry Haynes and Bailey Howard. That's the 1 to 13. For the Dolphins, they're not without their missing people. Either Tom Gilbert is out, and of course the Hammer. That means that Max Feagai, always get that wrong.
Fionnay, I think they call it. I don't know how you put Fionnay out of
Fionnay. He is in at number 3. He's up against Farnworth. I had an interesting conversation with someone who wants to know why Herbie Farnworth is not in the Queensland side. That's because he's British.
It's an easy answer.
Wrong country. Wrong country. Nicarima Katoya, Molo, Donahue, Kafusi is the captain, and and the rest looks pretty much straightforward for the Dolphins. Look, this is a really interesting game. It's a must-win game for the Dolphins, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it when we get to Penrith, because I just want to start talking about where I think teams need to be at and how many wins they need. Dolphins have had 4 wins. I think it's a must-win game for them. If they win, they get to 5 wins. From the next 14 games, they're going to need at least 8 wins. So 8 from 14. If they lose, that's to make the 8, in my opinion. Safe 8. I always talk about safe 8 versus maybe 8. Safe 8 means you're probably 7th. Maybe 8 means you're looking at for and against and whatnot. In saying that, they're playing a team who is just so in form and in tune with their rugby league at the moment. You've got for me the key guy, which is Matt Burton. Matt Burton is going to be more or less pulling the strings of this match. He's going to be the guy that's moving them around. He's going to be doing the high ball. his kicks and everything more or less brought everyone back into contention last week. I think they miss a bit on the outside edges, but however, they still have some very strong forwards in Hayes and Kickout and Josh Curran up there. Connor Tracy at fullback, the Sex Bomb and Matt Burton, I think are going to be too strong for the Dolphins at this stage. Griffo, I've got the Dogs. Who have you got?
First of all, I want to, you know how I watch some TV programs and a warning comes up before the program? Well, I'm putting a warning up to our listeners. Listen to my tips and then tip the other teams.
Don't say that. You're not that bad. I'll tell you what, though, the next game is going to do my head in because I can't. The Seagulls I can't pick, and friggin' Eels are the same. But anyway,
I was 0 from 6 last week.
Oh.
I tipped a few upsets, and they were the wrong upsets. In saying that, some of those teams went pretty close, but don't count. If pretty close, don't count.
It was pretty tough.
I tipped the last 2 games. Fortunately, Canberra saved me from complete embarrassment, and then the Rabbitohs got up as well. This game, I've actually not looked at the teams really closely yet. I'm not done with tips. There's a lot of guys out, as Shano said, for the Bulldogs. But they've still got talent there with the likes of Burton, Viliami kick out, Josh Curran comes back in. Yes, they're missing a lot of guys, but on the flip side, the Dolphins lose their biggest strike weapon in the hammer. He's out. They also lose the captain, Gilbert, who's out. While the Bulldogs are missing more players, I think the loss of the hammer and Gilbert almost compensate for that. Yeah. So Herbie's there. They've got him. They've got Katoa. But I tipped against the Bulldogs last week, and I tipped with the Dolphins last week, and both of those were mistakes. I think I've got to be conservative, and the conservative tip is the Bulldogs. I'm not certain they're going to win because they are missing a lot of talent, but they've still got a really a pretty handy side. The halves, in fact, the whole spine is still there. Tracy, Burton, Sex Bomb, and Reed Marnie. And then, I think they've got enough Sherrys in really good form. Interesting, Shano, a former favourite of yours, Blake Taff, is playing at number 4. That's...
Yeah, I find that, look, I've got to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of what Blake Taft has done in the junior league. He has a very plosive running style, and when he played SG ball for South, he was halfback. He's got very good hands and an exceptional passing game. Yeah. I actually think that if the ball does get to him, he can draw a bit of attention and pass the ball well. I think his mix of being a halfback and being a fullback, I think might help him in this. I've never seen it. I'll be very keen to see how he goes. I'm a big fan. I just think he's in his junior football and what he did with South Sydney, I think he'd done some fantastic things, and I only hope that this week I hope he plays some really good football because he's a nice guy. He's a really nice guy. I don't know him personally, but when you're on the sidelines, I've been on the sidelines and congratulated him he answers back and says thank you and does all the things that people say rugby league players should do, but it's not about rugby league players. It's about nice guys, and nice guys do that. So I really think...
good luck to him.
I agree.
I'm going to stick the Bulldogs here.
Yep. One game on Friday. It's at 8 o'clock. It's the Parramatta Eels up against the Manly Warringah Seagulls. The key outs for the Eels is Mitch Moses and Zach Lomax. That's very big. Daly Cherry Evans out and Jake Trebojevic out. Tom in. And Tom is not picked for the Blues. And I think this is what's going to really indicate who I'm going to pick. Dylan Brown and Dean Hawkins. Well, they're the halves for Parramatta. You have Josh Addo-Carr and Sean Russell. They're the wingers. With Zach Lomax being out. Penasini and Jordan Samrani in at centre. Daly Cherry Evans is out, which brings Jake Arthur. I was going to say Jesse Arthur, my apologies. Jake Arthur is in. Jake Trebojevic is out. Jazz Tavaga, he is in at lock. Ben Trebojevic in the second row. Olakawatu has been named. He will probably play with the Seagulls. Takiaho, Jake Simpson, and Ethan Bullimore rounds out that. Look, this is another. We're talking about numbers, and I'll get to it more when Penrith play, because Penrith are a team that we want to make the 8, and I'm just going to give some scenarios and some equations. This is another big game for the Eels. The Eels, this is the must-win game for them. They're playing. Unfortunately, I think the two players that can win the game for them are going to be playing for the Blues and may win the game for the Blues. The Seagulls just have far too much skill and players in positions of absolute power. Tom Trebojevic is what I'm talking about. You've got Jason Saab is on the wing, Ruben Garrick in the centres. Their halves, Luke Brooks and Jake Arthur, I think they're actually going to have to step up a little bit. I think they're going to have to create a kicking game which puts pressure on the Eels. The Eels have a very good forward pack. They've got a forward pack that can find meters. William Smith, Paulo, they're the front three who can do some really good work. Jermaine Hopgood in the back. I just think, though, the Seagulls forward pack, whilst one's got power, the other's got a bit more class. That's my opinion, and my opinion only. I just think that the Seagulls have a bit more class. I also think they've got a bit more to add when you look at their interchange bench. I think this game's going to be closer than we think. But I've got the Seagulls winning this one, Griff. I just think there's too much class across the board.
Yeah, I don't often heap praise on the Parramatta Eels, but I've got to say I've been quite impressed with what they've shown in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
I
since
agree.
Moses came back. They look very dangerous ball in hand.
When we talk about Penrith, I'm going to include, because when we start with Penrith, and I've sort of alluded to this, I'm going to talk about some equations, and Parramatta feature in that. I actually think Para are better than last place at the moment.
Oh, yeah, they are, because there's a few, I was going to say a word, let's say dog poo teams running around at the moment. And I don't have them in that category.
No.
Because they've started to actually play some good rugby league. Now, the catalyst to that obviously was Mitch Moses. Now, he's not here for this game. And so the challenge for these 17 is to be able to play close to that level that they were playing when Moses was on the field. I don't think they will. I think Manly will win this game. But I think they'll try and play a similar style. They like to run the ball. They're pretty good from broken field situations. And even though Moses isn't there, I think they've got to try and stick to that because it's been going all right for them. They were very pedestrian in attack early in the year and struggled to score points, struggled to stop points. But they're a very different team now. Manly, they also lose their playmaker. So interesting that both teams have lost their number 7, but I think it's going to be a bigger impact on the blue and gold than it is on Manly. You mentioned there's still class in this side. Turbo's there. He's a standout as the best player on the field, but I don't think he's fit. He's still being troubled by that knee. He just hasn't been able to stride out for some time. So if it was a fit Turbo, Manly win by about 30.
Yeah.
But
yep, I
don't think they're going to win by a big amount, but I do think they will still have enough. They've got Olakawatu, who was number 20 in the Origin squad, so he's able to play. That's a big bonus for them. Whether the Para guys can stop him is to be seen. Matt Lodge makes a return for the first time this year. I think he was on a train and trial contract with Manly, and he's found his way into the top 17. He can stay there if he plays well. They've got a few injuries to their big guys with Paseka out for the year, and the other guy whose name is escaping me, one of their other props. It'll come back to me. Oh, actually, Oshaole is out, of course.
Oshaole is out, yes.
And the other guy, there's another one, big fella. But he's not there either. My apologies, listeners, but when you get to my age, sometimes your memory isn't quite what it was. It will come to me at some stage, but there's another forward there who's missing a front rower. So they're definitely down on front rowers. So Lodge has an opportunity to get in there. Ethan Bullymore has been used as a back rower mostly this year, and they're playing him up in the 8 now. Toff Sipley, that's the guy I was trying to think of. Sipley. Yep. I remember seeing one of those signs, Sipley the best. But he's out as well. Manly for me, Shane.
Yeah, Manly for you? That's... Well, we're on song here. Well, on Saturday at 5:30 at Carrington Park in Bathurst. So if you are in the Bathurst region, go out, have a look at this game. We have the Penrith Panthers taking on the Knights from Newcastle. Here we go. There's when I was planning for this podcast, we do plan for the podcast, by the way, listeners. We just don't make it up as we go along. I look at who's out, and I'm like, So anyway, look, I'm not going to go through the teams now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to talk about, I've alluded to it, why this is a big game for Penrith, and I'm going to talk about some equations. Because I think Penrith are actually the side that we need to discuss when we start talking about who's going to make the 8 and who's not going to make the 8. And why this is a big game for Penrith is that Penrith at the moment are 3 wins and a bye. 3 wins and a draw. I honestly think that if you want, I have 2 things. Now, if you talk to me about rugby league and you talk to me about the 8, I have what we call the safe 8 and the maybe 8. Safe 8 means the point you have to get to where you're not worrying about anyone else. You're in the 8. You're probably 6th or 7th. You may be 8th, but there's a gap. Safe 8. Maybe 8 is when you have to rely on other people and hope to God the stars align. For and against is no longer an issue for Penrith because they're on an odd point. So
it could be though if they
finish on the same as the Cowboys. That is true, and if that's the case, well then wow. For me at the moment, safe 8 to get you into 6th or 7th or maybe 8th is 6 wins. If you have 6 wins, you're there. Penrith have 14 games left. I think of those next 14, if you had 6 wins, you'd want to win 7. If you have 6 wins at the moment and you win 7 of the next 14, with buys, that gets you the 32 tick. I think 32 is a safe 8. 30 is a maybe 8. Anything below that, I think you're singing for your supper. The reason why I think this is an important game is that would mean that from the next 14 games, this is 10 wins for Penrith. If there's any team that can do it, it's the Panthers. And if you're winning 10 of 14, you're the informed team of the competition. Why I'm bringing this up, and for Parra it's worse. For people like the Tigers, it's a bit better. Is that we're going to start talking about, I'm going to start talking about where teams are at heading forward. Why this is a must-win game for Penrith is that if Penrith have 14 games left, they will not want to drop 2 points to the Knights this week. Because that means if you want to be a safe 8, doing the sums, because they're on an odd number, you need then 10 of 13. And then once you start thinking of, you have to win, in every 4 games you've got to win 3 of them, that becomes really tough. And I just wanted to put that out there because, number one, it's something I think about. This is the stuff that keeps me awake at night. Who's going to make the 8? And look, this is why teams who have 6 and 7, they've made hay while the sun shines. They can win 7 of 14 and be pretty safe. But we have a very close competition at the moment. And I think that this is, when we're talking about these games, especially moving through this Origin period, and look, whilst Panthers have a game tonight, for you Penrith Panthers fan, your next 2 buys are before every other Origin match. So you're cheering there. The good thing is you have 2 buys before Origin. The bad news is when Origin's over, you don't have another buy again. So that's why I'm bringing it up with Penrith, because I just think, for me, if at the start of the year we talked about the Panthers being outside the 8, you would have gone, you're kidding. If I said they're outside the 4, you would have gone, oh, something's gone wrong. It's still a big road ahead, and I think this is a pivotal game for Penrith. They have to win this, and that's just my opinion. I'm a guy that does a podcast from his house. We used to do it from the car back in the day. I'm just a guy who's doing a podcast, trying to get you some information. This is Penrith fans. I'm not trying to light the wick on your pubic hair here. I'm just giving you, because that's what happens whenever I talk about Penrith. I'll get 50,000 messages going, you hate Penrith. I don't hate Penrith. What I'm saying is that everyone in rugby league land had Penrith in their 8, probably had Penrith in their 4. This is the equation now we're living with. And I don't remember the last time I had Penrith outside the 8, let alone outside of my 4. And I think this is why this is such a pivotal game for Penrith in Bathurst this week, that I'll read the outs. Brian To'o, Dylan Edwards, Isaiah Yeo, Isaiah Papali'i, Liam Martin, Luke Garner, Nathan Cleary. If there's one feature of rugby league, Panthers teams, we know, is you take those players out, other players come in and step up. That has to happen this week. That's just my opinion. I'm just previewing this, and you're going to talk to an expert in a minute on rugby league. I'm just giving my opinion.
Wow.
Jacob Sasai-Fidi is out with Kalen Ponga. Kalen Ponga due to Origin. So we're just going to go through some things. Dane Laurie, fullback with Fletcher Sharp. Alamotti, James Schiller. Dane Gagai is now the captain for the Knights. Casey McLean is in at centre. Thomas Jenkins with Blaze Talangi and Brad Schneider. Mitch Kenny is captain for the Panthers. I think the guy above him, Moses Leota and Tyson Frizzell, I think they're 2 guys. I think this is going to actually have a really good. I think it's going to be a really good matchup. Eisenhuth in prop. We got Ricky, Henry, Lindsay Smith, and for the Knights, it looks pretty much stock standard. On the interchange bench for Penrith, we have Austin Diaz. I'd like to know your thoughts on him. I'm not someone he's not someone I'm not too familiar with, Griffo. But yeah, I look at the two teams. I'm picking Penrith. I think Penrith will know the gravity of the situation, and I think what I said earlier, I'm going to talk a lot about towards the end of this year and looking at who's going to be in the top 8. I think Penrith are going to win this game, not necessarily because the players they have on the field are any better than the Newcastle Knights. I think because they understand more than Newcastle the gravity of what happens if they lose. I got the Panthers, Griff.
Okay. Firstly, listeners, Shano is a good man. He's one of my very closest friends. I love him, but he is way overstating my abilities.
No. No.
No,
I'm no expert. Of it.
No. I've got an opinion, and sometimes it's right, but mostly, well, I won't say mostly.
No, right. Most right.
Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But I will agree 100% with Shane that the importance of this game. First of all, Penrith are down on the ladder. I haven't done any maths or anything to work out how many wins they need. What I know is they need to win this game because they're playing against a team that virtually every other team is going to pick up 2 points against. Because this team, Newcastle, they are woeful. They are getting Penrith at the absolute best time because Shano listed 7 players that are out. I'm going to give you another one who wasn't on that list because he didn't play last week, but Scott Sorensen. Is also so.
Yeah.
8 of the 17, if Penrith listed the top 17, 8 of those guys are out. That's more than 50%. So they are absolutely stretched. Now, in the past, they were able to cope because they built up a bank of points before Origin. Now when they go to the bank, there's not a whole lot in the account. So it is crucial that they win this game. They go in with a forward pack that does not have one specialist second rower. Due to injuries and suspension and state of origin, all of their second rowers are out of this team. Maverick Gaia was in the squad a couple of weeks ago, didn't play last game. I'm assuming he's injured. I don't know if they've got the reserve grade playing this week, but this is largely a reserve grade team with a sprinkling of first graders. And I'll credit Newcastle. They're a little bit similar. They've got injuries, and I think maybe just the one guy in Origin in Ponga, their best player. But so they're not at full strength either. But their forward pack is pretty good. Leo Thompson back in the team there. They should win this game, Newcastle. They should win the game. I'm not tipping them. I'm going to tip Penrith. As I look at the back line of the 2 to 5, Alamotti, Tango, McLean, Jenkins, and then throw in the 6 to Lungy, those guys were under immense defensive pressure for a number of games, and Casey McLean had lost his spot. So the Knights are going to target Penrith out wide based on what we saw earlier in the year. So they were very leaky in defense out wide. I hope they win. They've got, as I said, a sprinkling of first graders. Moses Leota has to have one of the games of his life to lead this forward pack. Mitch Kenny is a really good player. Eisenhuth comes in. He can do a bit of a job. He's not going to win you the game, but if he can make some yardage. Preston Rickey, I think he's only played one NRL game, and he didn't really have a good game. He's more known as a prop, but he's playing in 11. Liam Henry is a prop, playing in 12. And then Lindsay Smith, I think he can be suited to the 13 role, taken over from Isaiah Yeo. He's not been in the form that got him into the green and gold last year. Lindsay Smith is not having that sort of a year. If he was, he'd be wearing sky blue. Because he was in hot form. He was great in the grand final, deserved his spot in the Kangaroos, but we just haven't seen that sort of form from him. He needs to step up. Interesting, they've got Luke Summerton on the bench as a backup hooker. I think what we'll see is Mitch Kenny, and Shano, you said he was captain, and rightly so. I think we'll see Mitch Kenny when Summerton comes on. Mitch Kenny will go into lock. He'll be still playing 80 minutes in a different role. Austin Diaz, who is I think he's the younger brother of Buenos Diaz. Austin Diaz come, I think, through the Tigers system, and I think he may have played a few NRL games for the Tigers a few years ago. I don't know much about him. He's a he's a prop who's not a really big guy, but I think he's fairly mobile. So he gets his chance. From what I've heard, he's done pretty well in the New South Wales Cup. Lurin Patea is a very good prop, and he brings some attack off the bench. He's to me, he's in the mold of a Moses Leota.
Yeah.
He's a hard running forward, built pretty close to the ground, but very solid unit. And then Jack Cole gets his spot on the bench there. Now, he can cover, obviously, 6 or 7, and also could play in the centres if need be. And again, he's been doing some good things back in New South Wales Cup. He started the year in the 6 jersey. Talangi has sort of, in the last few weeks, shown that that 6 jersey is his. And he's really, it's encouraging to see Blaze Talangi. The last game they played, I think he set up 4 tries against the Cowboys. And he needs to be the man, really, in this game. If Penrith are going to win, it's going to come down to Blaze Talangi, I think. I really want to see Casey McLean do well. He's a future star. He's copped a lot of criticism for his defence, and there was a game where, I think it was against the Cowboys early in the year, where he could have passed to Jenkins, and they might have won that game. I didn't see it that way. Yes, he had a man outside him, but he sort of had the fullback was falling and just uncle tapped him. So I'm not too critical there. Tago's been in good form, which they'll need him to be, and Alamotti, I think his best position is in the centres, but there he is on the wing. So he's going to bring the ball back strongly. Dane Laurie, he can be really good, Dane Laurie, and then sometimes he can do the case of the dropsies.
Yeah.
Need him to be great.
Look,
we've spent a lot of time on this game. At the end of the day, I think Newcastle should win the game. If I look at the strength of their forward pack, Fletcher Sharp is the danger man for them at back in the jersey number 1. But I'm going to tip Penrith. They have to win.
100%. I often get criticised for what I say against Penrith. Can I just do a shout out? There's a young man. He's on the reserves bench. Harrison Hassett. He played the under-19s game for New South Wales. He is a really good talent. I think that congratulations for him. I haven't seen him named in the reserves.
No, he hasn't been.
I think it's a very, very... congratulations to him to be named in the reserves. I don't think it's going to be too long before he breaks out into first grade. He's one guy I've seen and I've watched, and I actually think he's a second rower with some very good skills. So
he is a second rower, and they're short of second rowers. As I said, they don't have a second rower.
That's why. Yeah, I just think congratulations to him, because I have been watching. My life is rugby league, but he's one guy who I think keep an eye out, and if you follow a team that needs a second rower, he could definitely add value to your team. I think it's good that he's been named on, albeit on the reserves, but it's good acknowledgement for the quality football that this young man does play. On Saturday at 7:35 at Gosford, we have the Sydney Roosters taking on the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks. Stone Street is out for the Sharks. He's the only one.
Cindy bit him on the ankle.
We've got Angus. We've got outs for the Roosters. We've got Angus Crichton, Connor Watson, Lindsay Collins, White, Toya, and Spencer Leniu. So that's a fair list of players out for that team.
I didn't realise Nafahu White.
Yes, Nafahu White's out.
So is he injured or suspended? Because he's not in the Origin.
He's injured.
Okay. That's a massive loss.
I don't remember seeing him on the suspension list. I say that only because I don't remember seeing him on the suspension list.
All right. So that's a massive loss.
That brings Dominic Young on the wing. It means their forward pack is a bit of a tapestry of players with the interchange. Probably the most, if you look at across a lot of them, Victor Radley, of course, he's going to be the lock. Egan Butcher's in a second row. Nat Butcher, he is on the interchange bench. It just means that when you look at this side, who isn't firing on alls at the moment, they're playing a Sharks team who really isn't missing anyone. They are 1-17 in absolute ship-shape form. They've got look, the Sharks didn't play. The Sharks played a very good game last week against the Storm, and when you look at it, I just think that when you look at one side, the Roosters, who are a bit of a tapestry, they've got James Teddy at the back and Daniel Tupou on the wing. Marky Mark's on the centres this week. Docker Clay is coming at a hooker. Egan Butcher, Suya Wong is in the second rowers with Victor Radley in at lock. They're playing a side who is just in tune with their team at the moment and doing some very, very good football. Everyone sort of... no, I tell a lie. Hang on. Do I tell a lie? Yes. Hirati's in on the wing. For the Sharks, that's the major in for them, but they're in tune with what they're doing. I've got the Sharks winning this one because basically I think when you look at the Roosters that are out, that's a lot of holes that sort of makes like Swiss cheese. And for the Sharks, it's hard to believe that it's just business as usual during this period for them where they're at.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That a side could be such a good team. And for mine, at the start of the year, I had them top 4. There's nothing that's happened that's changed my mind on that. Yet they don't have one player playing in State of Origin. And there's not a player there that I would have had in the New South Wales team. I don't think there's too many that are Queenslanders in the Sharks. They got a few Kiwis.
Yeah, it's more Kiwis, yeah.
But yeah, they're almost at full strength. You mentioned Mawini Hiroti comes in for Stone Street, who got injured, unfortunately, last week. I've got to have the Sharks. I thought they were really impressive last week against the Melbourne Storm. You mentioned that right at the start of the show, but we didn't go in. It was a great game between two of the heavyweights, and the Sharks were able to get the 2 points against a Storm team that did have Harry Grant back in the side. So while they weren't quite at full strength, they were nearly there, the Storm. The Roosters are way below top strength with the guys who are missing through Origin, and also as Nafahu White added to that list, and he's been really good for them. So their forwards are very much stretched. Victor Radley, he missed 3 tackles that led to tries against the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
That was pretty ordinary, I thought, from a guy who is, he built his game on strong defence, first and foremost. He's got ball skills and he's a really good player, but, geez, he was off with his defence last week. And I think he might have been playing in the second row as opposed to lock. I might be wrong on that one, but whatever the case is, he's got to lift his game. He's probably their second highest profile player behind Teddy, certainly in this team. But I can't see the Roosters getting the points here. I think they'll score some tries because there's plenty of pace in their back line and a reasonable amount of skill. So I do think they're going to score some tries, but I think the forward dominance will be with the Sharks. Fanua Blake is playing really well. State of Oregon, Kafusi's going well. Nicker is a great hole runner. Billy Burns is playing the best form of his life. And McInnes and Blake Brantley are very, very solid players. Then they can bring on the likes of Talakai to break the game open. Hamlin Welle, Haystacks Calhoun, very good, and Atkinson can go anywhere in the back line.
Yep.
So Sharks for me.
Yeah. I think it could be a bit of a score on the weekend. Well, this game has got me itching for Sunday. Sunday at 4:05 at Go Media Stadium in Auckland, it sees the New Zealand Warriors taking on the Canberra Raiders. Look, Fisher Harris, Mitch Barnett, major outs with Hudson Young.
Fisher Harris injured again.
Yes, James Fisher Harris.
The Peck again, or? Because I thought he came back really early. He was supposed to be out for an extended period. He was probably only missing about 4 or 5 games.
He has I think he has a. I want to say. Look, I should do. It was the only thing I didn't look up. But I think his injury is weeks more than months.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but he did have a pec injury.
That's right.
And then he came back last week.
He came back last week, and it didn't bode.
Yeah, I was just wondering if he's redone them. But I thought it was, why are you bringing him back? Like,
yeah.
And if he's re-injured it, well, that's just saying that there's this stupidity amongst the Warriors for bringing him back too early. If that's the case, that he re-injured.
I don't know if he re-injured or whether it was just it's just like an extension of the fact that he's still injured. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
wouldn't have brought him back. I heard that he came back underdone. So for New Zealand, there's some key players in key areas. We've got DWZ and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. They're the wingers. Adam Pompey, Kurt Capewell, his centre's been doing real well. Massive shout out to their halves, Harris DeVita and Luke Metcalf. Wade Egan in a hooker has been doing a fantastic job. Aaron Clark, their bench they've got some very good value out of their bench. For the Raiders, No Hudson Young is a really, really big. Hudson Young's a massive loss for them. If he was injured, you'd feel sorry for them. The fact he's out on Origin is another thing. This is a massive game. This is, for both these sides, it is huge in the context of their season. Warriors are on 8 wins, and guess what? The Raiders are on 8 wins. The only difference is the Raiders have had no bye, the Warriors have had their bye. They're both on 8 wins each. Whoever wins this match goes to 9 wins. It's massive. I've got the Warriors winning this one. I just think the Warriors, looking at the teams, looking at the facts in New Zealand, for me, I look at Hudson Young and I just think that's a massive loss for any team. It's just what he does in attack and defence is huge, as well as what he can offer creatively. I've got the Warriors. If the Warriors keep playing the way they're playing, for me, it's the Warriors that are going to win this match, Griff.
What a matchup!
It's matching around.
Is it 2 and 3 on the ladder? I think, is that right?
Yep.
I think it is. Yeah. These two teams, I watched them play in the very first game of the competition, and the Raiders were all over the Warriors that night. And I thought Warriors spooners. But they've absolutely turned that around, the Warriors, and they've been fantastic.
They've lost 2 games all year.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
You know what their points differential is, though? It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's not much.
Like 5.
Well, it was -2 before last week, I think. Something like that. So they're winning narrowly, and they might have copped a couple of thumpings. The Raiders beat them by a fair bit, and I think it might have been the Melbourne Storm on Anzac Day who put the cleaners through them there. But they're stacked with double-barreled names in the back line there, 4 of them. I'm really surprised Kurt Capewell didn't make the Queensland squad even. Like, the guy who can cover a lot of positions, and he's not in bad form. So that was a little bit surprising. But they're I think he's the co-captain, not Metcalf, the big unit. Mitchell Barnett's the guy I'm thinking of. He's out a lot, and they played a number of weeks without Fisher Harris, but now they're without both their starting front row. So I think that's going to be a bit of a problem for him. I'm not certain Canberra win this game, but I do think they can do it. It's 4:05 on Sunday. This is a really a good matchup. The Raiders are a young side, very, very fast in the back line. The Warriors' back line is a much older group of players, highly decorated, a number of them. I think Canberra are going to get them with their speed. They know the blueprint to beat the Warriors, and I just think they're going to get them. I've sort of been tipping against the Warriors a little bit over the last few weeks at my peril, but I do think the Raiders have got the guns, even without Hudson Young. It's the only guy they're missing from last week. Of course, unfortunately, the young Englishman is out. Matty Nicholson. Nichols. It might be Nicholson.
Yeah.
But he's out for almost the year. But I do think we're going to see the Raiders win this game.
Yep. I fully agree with you, Griffo. Well, that's it. That brings us to the end of this round and brings us to the end of the podcast. Griffo, is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off for the evening?
Oh, I just want to say thanks to our listeners again for tuning in. We'll do our preview and tip on Origin next week. I think, we spoke about it a fair bit earlier, but we'll try and get a Tuesday.
Yeah, most definitely. There's a short Tuesday one you guys can listen to on the way to work on Wednesday. Very pumped. Very pumped.
I don't like these rounds where 34 or 30 or 36 of the best players.
Yeah,
aren't available. But we've got a lot of buys this week. So for some teams, that's really good. Teams like the Dragons, who've got a bye, maybe not so good, because I don't think they have any Origin. Oh, no, they got Val Holmes. Yeah. But, Penrith, 5 guys in Origin, and they've not got they had the bye last week. So I know you said before the next 2 Origins are going to bye, but I don't know how they had a bye last week. But, it is what it is. And I'll be happy when there's no buys.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything should be standalone. We've probably had that at nauseum when it comes to talking about that. We have our feelings fairly well cemented that really, if we're going to have a proper competition where everything's fair and equal, that these should be alone. And no rugby league played this week, but then again, we don't own television stations, and apparently that's what matters. So, Griffo, thanks again. As always, pleasure to have a chat with you. Love your insights. Everyone, have a great week. Hope your team wins, and we will see you next Tuesday, where we're going to preview a game that's just sends tingles up your spine, which is Origin. Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much. Good night. Good morning, however it is. But bye-bye.